Welcome to Inside Aesthetics, the world's leading podcast for injectors and aesthetic businesses. I'm Dr. Jake Sloan, an aesthetic doctor with over 16 years experience in facial aesthetics.
And I'm David Siegel, an entrepreneur and business mentor with over 20 years of experience in our industry. Our podcasts are aimed at industry professionals, and any information or advice given is general in nature. You should consult with a healthcare provider before undergoing any treatment.
You can also subscribe to us on Patreon for on-demand content for injectable and business education.
Okay.
We're back in the studio. It's been a while.
It has been a while. You've been in China. I've been in Byron Bay, Perth.
Enjoying yourself from what I see.
Well, I went to the Fresh Conference, which was great, presented there. And before that, I was over in Perth for Hugel doing some presentations and workshops. So it's been a little bit of a busy period. I feel like I haven't really seen you that much, although we've had content banked up. So to the listeners, it's probably felt like business as usual, but we've been on a little bit of a hiatus. Yeah, exactly. How was China?
It was good. I was saying to a colleague yesterday, I could have been in any country. I was just in a hotel, in a little boardroom, having a business meeting. So I could have been in Sydney for if you didn't know you were in China. But yeah, it was great. It was sort of a soft skills training. So nice. Public speaking training, which was really cool. Don't normally get to do that.
Yeah, it was good.
Some Asian colleagues. So yeah, it was great.
Excellent. And before we kick off with today's podcast, let's just talk about, well, the elephant in the room, which is Apple and our Patreon and fees. Yes. What's going on there?
All right, to keep this simple, from November 1st, so some of you who maybe have checked our Patreon prices since November 1st, you may have noticed if you used an Apple device to log in, that the prices seem very expensive.
Yep.
And that's because Apple have applied a 30% extra subscription fee that we have to cover.
Yeah.
Hence the total price goes up. Anyway, the way around it is just don't use an Apple device if you want to sign up for our Patreon. It's very simple. Or even if you're on an Apple phone, just don't download the Patreon app, sign up on Safari or Firefox or Google Chrome. Mm-hmm. So just to, not scare you off with scary prices, we haven't increased our prices, just Apple being arseholes.
Thanks, Apple.
Yeah. So that's our advertising over.
Over. So today we are joined by Charlie Abboud and Dr. Bilt from InstantCosmetics, and we're here to talk about the relaunch of your offering to the industry, to talk to us all about telehealth, what you guys are doing. You've built some exciting new software to help practitioners out there in our space. So welcome to you both. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
we appreciate it.
Thanks,
Charlie, we were just saying off air, I met you years ago. In fact, you were the first person I probably met in the injectable industry in this country, because you offered me the job to eventually work with David. So you previously worked for Laser Clinics Australia, but your story goes even further back than that. So tell us how you got into aesthetics and your sort of story.
I still remember the day we met, actually, Jake. I was down in Newtown, I think.
Yeah, it was in Camperdown,
Yeah, Camperdown. So I started with Allergan in the injectable or the cosmetic space. So I worked with Allergan for a few years, looking after the Botox and the Juvederm portfolio. And then after which I went over to Laser Clinics Australia as sort of the head of injectables there. I did compliance. I did my almost 10-year stint there at Laser Clinics. I worked with David, alongside David, for many of those years, actually, probably the whole time.
Well, exactly.
That I was there.
Well, I remember. I remember I was at Cosmos when you first joined Allergan, and that was when we were both we were young and good looking in our 20s.
Charlie still is.
Charlie still is. Yeah.
Well, thanks. I don't know about that, but
and then again,
you were at Cosmos in Double Bay, and that was sort of where sort of all started. I met David, and then a few years after that, I think you actually, David, contacted me about a potential role at Laser Clinics.
That's right.
And we went from there, and the rest is history. And so I was there. Yeah, I was there for about 10 years. I left Laser Clinics and I consulted a bit for Teoxan, which was a great gig, great company to work with. And then, I took a couple of years off because I just wanted to get out of the industry. So I decided to buy a cafe. That was even harder than work than being in the industry, but it was fun. And then I recently came back into the industry. I I work with, obviously, Instant Cosmetics under the West Farmers Health banner, which is an incredible company to work with. So I've been very fortunate, and I'm loving being back in the industry.
Tell us about what you did at LCA, because it does sort of dovetail nicely into this, and your experience obviously is probably why you were sought after by West Farmers. So what did you actually do? What was your role?
So I guess the role initially, it kind of evolved over the 10 years, Jake, but initially the role was Laser Clinics was in its infancy stages of sort of starting up. There were a handful of clinics around the country and certainly a handful of injectors around the country. And so my specific role was to grow the business in the sense that we needed to get more injectors on board, train them, and we also needed to grow our footprint in the market. So essentially, taking it from a startup business to becoming a corporate replicable business, whether it be in Australia, New Zealand, now UK, Canada, I understand. I guess the founders, Boback and Alistair, had a vision, and their vision was to, open up clinics Australia-wide initially, and to scale the business to, the size that it is today with, 150 plus clinics. And so my specific role was, to just recruit, train, make sure we have nurses that are qualified to be able to service injectables in clinics. And I guess at the time when I started with Laser Clinics, it was sort of the beginning of introducing nurses in shopping centres, which was kind of unheard of at that time. Nurses did not want to work in shopping centres, the industry has evolved so much over that last 10 plus years, and now now sort of every shopping centre has multiple clinics that offer injectable treatments, cosmetic treatments, and I think it's just, I guess, it's the way of the future. No one really thinks about it too much anymore, where the clinic is. It's actually a point of convenience, really, for consumers, because the way I see it, and I think that the way a lot of them see it, is they're able to go in, they've got 3 hours free parking, they can get their treatment, they can get their shopping done, they can get multiple things done at the one time, and then, it's just convenience really is...
Yeah. Totally.
Is a factor there.
Yeah. And what do you think about sort of where the industry's at now? Because you and I kind of grew up in it, really. When we started, it was, cash under the table, people being very secretive about getting these treatments done. And now we've got, I make the joke that if you pick up a stone and throw it in any direction in a major city in Australia, you'll probably hit 20 injectors.
Correct.
And we've sort of now grown to this point where it's become almost a commodity to a certain extent. And I think we're starting to see people realize, hey, this is not quite as easy as it used to be. There's a lot more competition. We've obviously had regulation, which has come into play, which I think overall is a good thing, because it was getting a bit wild there for a little bit. So what are your thoughts on where we're at as an industry, and what do you think kind of the next little period of time looks like?
Look, I think we've certainly come a very long way from where we kind of, you and I both started, David. I think, as you say, it's no longer a taboo topic, basically. It's one of those things where people are open to talking about, the treatments that they get. It's not so much, something that they try and keep a secret anymore. I think also in terms of accessibility, it's a lot more accessible now. I remember when I first started, the prices were just through the roof. I mean, a lot of people were basically, were kind of locked out of being able to get these treatments, whereas now it's very, very different. And as you say, there's a lot more competition, but also competition brings, I think it's healthy competition, and also it brings prices down, and it makes it more accessible for consumers, which I think is also great. Yeah. I think in terms of a regulatory space, we've certainly seen it evolve over time. And I think it's one of those industries where the regulatory space will continue to be fluid. It's never going to be, there's never a dull moment, as I always like to say, in this industry. I think it'll continue to evolve. I do agree with a lot of what happens in this regulatory space, and I think it's obviously there to protect patient outcomes and patient safety. But I think it's an industry which is constantly evolving, constantly changing, whether it be, advancements in technology and in treatments and in products. We've seen a lot of new products enter the market, certainly over the last few years, whether it be, dermal fillers or whether it be neurotoxins. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot more new ones entering the market over the next few years. So it's exciting to be back. It's exciting to see, the new products enter the market. And I'm looking forward to, just sinking my teeth in getting back into it.
Perfect. Now let's introduce our second guest for the podcast, Dr. Bilt. So you've been sat there very quietly, patiently. Introduce yourself and your background and obviously your role with Instant Cosmetics.
Yeah, so I actually joined Instant Scripts initially, which is our sort of brother sister company of Instant Cosmetics, and then sort of worked my way into the cosmetic side of the business, which has been excellent. So I started when there were less than 10 doctors, and now we're a very, very big company, no longer a small startup, and acquired by Wesfarmers, as Charlie mentioned. So my role here as a bit of a book nerd myself is probably to make sure that we adhere to obviously the new regulations and guidelines that continue to come out, and making sure that at the end of the day we value patient safety the most. As you guys have mentioned as well previously, this industry was a little bit cowboy-y for a while, and we sort of want to make sure that that's no longer the case. And whatever patient access, we want to make sure it's safe.
Yeah.
I finished medicine in 2017-18. And then spent a few years in the hospital. I was training in psychiatry for a while, and then decided that when I got pregnant, that was a bit too much.
Yeah.
So I've left that and came into the cosmetic field instead. And it's been great so far. Instead of dealing with, very ill, unwell people, I get to deal with patients and clients who wants to feel better and look better. In a sense, I reckon that having a background in psychiatry is quite helpful.
Yeah.
There's quite a close linkage between, just self-esteem, depression, anxiety, and your overall physical look, I suppose. So I think having that was great in transitioning into this.
Yeah. And so what were you doing before you joined Instant Cosmetics in terms of experience in this space, and did you spend much time sort of in your own practice or working for someone else doing injectables?
Yeah, so actually started my own practice with another colleague pretty much at a very similar time as I started doing telehealth calls with Instant Cosmetics. But at the time, I think we had another doctor as the medical director. He sort of had to step down a couple of years later. So that's when I took the role. But yeah, so a couple of years injecting prior to properly being the medical director for Instant Cosmetics.
Perfect. So, Charlie, you're obviously owned by a company called Wesfarmers, but Instant Cosmetics stands alone as a service that you service all clinics, because Silk are known to be sort of part of the Wesfarmers group, but Instant Cosmetics is actually servicing all clinics. Is that correct?
Correct. We service independent nurses and doctors that would like to have a scripting provider, any healthcare professional, whether it be doctors, dentists, or nurses, basically. Obviously, the nurses will require a scripting provider, which is what we provide them with, but we also have a wholesale section to our business, which provides competitive pricing to all healthcare professionals, even doctors and dentists, and obviously nurses. So that is aside from the Silk and the Medi-Aesthetics business. They've got their own sort of businesses, and then it's a very different structure. We're a business-to-business company, and they're a B2C, business-to-consumer company.
Yeah. Right. I've just got one more question. So many of our listeners obviously are in Australia, and we're sort of assuming that we understand why we need a company like yourself. But for many countries, this is a bit odd. So how does it work here? Why do we need a compliance company, and sort of what are the laws around it?
Sure. I mean, I guess in Australia, certainly since I've been in this space, it's the law for a doctor to consult with a patient for their first treatment and to put together a treatment plan with the nurse. And in New South Wales, that treatment plan is valid for 6 months, and in all other states in Australia, it's valid for 12 months. And so the doctor who's conducting the telehealth, along with the nurse and the patient, will put together a treatment plan based on the requirements. And then once the doctor approves that treatment plan, then they work with the nurse basically, and they've got that treatment plan valid for the 6 or the 12 months. So that's the way Australia regulates for a doctor to be able to see the patient first time, whether it be face-to-face, but obviously our model is through digital health. And so, we provide that service that service to our nurses and their patients. We have a panel of doctors that are always available 7 days a week to perform those consults. And then once the direction to administer or the treatment plan has been approved, then it's over to the nurse to basically perform those treatments.
Yeah. And just for listeners abroad, if we look at our industry here in Australia, the non-surgical space or the injectable space is probably dominated 80%, 90% nurses.
Yeah.
So then that differs from around.
absolutely.
So that, I guess that's why companies like InstantCosmetics and so on are in this space, because the nurses cannot work independently. They still need doctor oversight and supervision to give them authority to treat and so on. So that, if anyone's wondering why that's here, is because our industry is just essentially dominated, the non-surgical space, by nurses.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, over the last, 10 years, certainly we've seen a huge influx of nurses that have joined the industry. I personally know a lot of nurses that have, gone into nursing just to join and to become cosmetic injectors.
Yeah.
A lot of them would work traditionally for, for independent doctors or even for franchise models and businesses. But over the past 5 or so years, we've seen a huge increase of nurses going out on their own. And companies like us and, we provide the support and service of helping nurses run their business by providing, undeniable offer when it comes to the software that we provide, when it comes to the medical team and support that we provide, whether it's in providing consultations, but also in helping them manage any adverse events or any complications that might arise, to helping them grow their business. So it's basically a one-stop shop, really. We like to think that we're there to help our nurses along the journey in becoming and having a successful business, not just from one aspect, but from all aspects of, of growing a business, starting up, growing a business, and then taking them on that journey.
Bill, can I ask, maybe for the listeners again, what actually happens? So a nurse FaceTimes a doctor from your company, and then what questions are asked? What's the expectation of the laws and regulations? And, what does the patient sort of feel about that whole process?
Yeah, so I'll just walk you through initially how the flow goes. So as we have our new platform now, it has medical questionnaires, as well as consent questions, and for patient to sign off on that. So all in all, it's pretty much a one-stop shop for them as well. They first put in their treatment plan as to what they would like to treat the patient with. Of course, after a full consultation, and assessing the patient's facial features. Once they've popped all that in, patient then answers their medical questionnaire, which the doctor will also have access to when they're doing that video call. So when we do pick up that call or pick up that patient, we go through, make sure that they don't have any contraindications, no autoimmune conditions that might elevate their risk to certain treatments. We then obviously have that chat with the patient, make sure that they're aware of the risk and possible complications, side effects that can arise from the treatment that's been listed there, what outcome they should be expecting, just to set their expectations and make sure that, they're not thinking that they're going to have a massive change the next morning when they wake up. So doing all of that ensures patient satisfaction and also safeguards the nurses as well to a certain extent, in case they sort of haven't done that, or sometimes they might have oversold some things just to keep it at bay. And then once we're all happy, if the patient's happy, there's no further questions or concerns, we then approve that treatment plan, which then gets stored on our platform.
Yeah.
Nurses can then reflect back onto that treatment plan if the patient were to return in the next, 3 to 4 months for their next Botox touch-up. then it'll be right there for them to access. And as Charlie was saying, it lasts 12 months in all states, aside from New South Wales, where it's only 6 months.
Right. I was curious, Dr. Bill, what do you think about the regulations that have come in? And I guess in some ways, and this is what I'm hearing anecdotally from, people like Jake and some of our guests that we've had on and conversations that you have out there in the space, is that the relationship between the practitioner and the patient has shifted since these regulations have come in, and in some ways have empowered the practitioner again. A lot of the time people would feel coerced or, bullied potentially by patients to demand what treatment they want done, what product's going to be used. And so do you think that these changes have sort of changed the dynamic of the relationship? And have you noticed that across the board with sort of people within your space or the prescribers?
So I reckon in my own practice, I sort of always have a longer first consultation with the patient anyways. Mm-hmm. We're always going to be patient driven in the sense that, it's never really nice to tell them what's wrong with them. So I always allow the client or the patient that space to discuss what they reckon they want to improve. Mm-hmm. But without, advertising each and every single product, sometimes it is better and it does empower us a little more to then assist the patient in selecting what products might be suitable for them. Whereas previously, when everything was able to be advertised, they might have heard this one great thing about this one product and, they must have it in them, when actually it might not be the most suitable product to assist in that little thing they wanted to fix. Or say some patients are super against dermal filler, but wants to improve their nasal labial folds and would like some Botox for it. So I think just really having that comprehensive first initial consultation is so important.
Yeah.
And I know that it's been a huge, massive, uproar almost when we weren't allowed to promote certain products or certain prescription products. But in saying that, I reckon there are some pros to it as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, the cons is that patient finds it harder to access information or legit information because we can't share it. But in saying that, when you do book that patient in, have that conversation, you're able to give them a lot of education.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I can see the arguments on both sides. Obviously patients want to be empowered and they feel they want to know everything, but sometimes a little bit of knowledge can be dangerous. And if they don't have the anatomical understanding or sort of appreciate the nuance between different products and how one might be more suitable to their face than the other, it can sort of be, a little bit of information can sort of be dangerous. What do you think, Jake? I mean, you're a doctor in this space. Have you noticed that shift? What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of patients, firstly, they're a bit annoyed. Oh, we don't know the prices and, what services you offer, etc. But I think that's kind of calmed down now. And it's interesting. A lot of my new patients often go to American sources of information, whether it's Instagram, TikTok, or even YouTube, and they'll quote certain things like, "Oh, I saw an MRI of filler," or "I saw this thing about filler migration," or "I saw this thing about Reduran." And in some ways, it's great that they're getting something. They're getting some education, and it's sparking a conversation that they then want to come in and actually talk about properly. But some of them get really fixated on specific things that they've seen, which are heavily spoken about on social media, that we can't then fill in the gaps. We can't really do anything or easily on our social media. And I've kind of decided I'm just not going to do it anymore. It's just too difficult. And I'd rather have, like Bill said, an hour's conversation properly where we just go through everything. So I guess in a weird way, nothing's really changed. We're still going to have a good consult. But I think maybe injectors are thinking more about, wow, the consultation is actually really important and I shouldn't lean so heavily on marketing.
That's a good point. Yeah.
I think also it's the law and the regulation isn't going to change. So they've implemented it for a reason. It's better to embrace that and just move forward with that being the case. Because no matter how much fuss we try to make, or even if we don't agree with it, they're not going to revert it or change it. So might as well roll with it and make the most of it.
Can I ask you, this isn't supposed to be a curveball, but I don't really understand the FaceTime consult sort of process. So I think you said the nurse obviously consults and looks at the patient, does the medical history, etc., and then obviously the doctor comes online and checks it all. But who is supposed to be legally in charge of the design of the treatment?
Yeah, so generally the nurse would be. The doctor's role is mainly to have a look and make sure that it's safe, and that you agree with, selected treatments, etc. But end of the day, that initial consult and that treatment plan will come from the nurse. For instance, though, if they've put down a mil of lip filler and the patient's already very overfilled, then we can actually say, let's not do that bit.
Yeah.
But you can do the other steps.
Yeah. That's a difficult one, isn't it? Because then as long as it's not medically dangerous, then there might be a situation where it's a matter of aesthetic taste and opinion, whereas someone actually wants that overfilled, augmented lip, and you might be going, oh gosh, that looks awful. There's no way you can put any more product in there. But that's what the patient wants, and that's what the nurse has sort of designed the treatment plan around. So how do you sort of switch that off? How do you know when it's time to say, you know what, this is just my opinion. There's nothing medically unsafe about this. If this person wants to look like a freak show, then that's their business. But how do you sort of make that decision or switch that off? I guess that could be difficult. You might be biting your tongue sometimes.
Yeah, look, it is because, as you know, globally beauty standards are very, very different. And coming from more of an Asian background personally, I'm not a huge fan of very overfilled lips. Yeah. So I suppose my threshold is probably even slightly lower than some other doctors we have on the team. But end of the day, if you do feel put in a lot of filler in the lips, you are actually altering anatomy. Yeah. So there's a certain extent to when you're like, actually, it is becoming a little bit unsafe and your risk is probably starting to get higher now. So I would go in more of that safety angle anyways. And if it's already overfilled, I would still never go in with another mil. If you really want a little bit more, maybe let's discuss something a little less, or see if there's other features we can enhance to make sure that overall, the patient or the client, get their desired look, but not just in the one spot. Yeah. And the other thing that we now have to implement is our body dysmorphic disorder questionnaire as well, just to make sure that the patient's aware, we do have to take it more seriously, and that's now regulation. So we want to make sure that if we do it, they're going to be happy with the treatment and, not wanting to keep coming back to fill in more and more. So there are, I suppose, steps to hopefully prevent dissatisfaction and still remain safe. Yeah.
All right, Charlie. So you joined in April this year, so relatively new to the InstantCosmetics family, and I'm assuming you've come in with a mandate. Obviously, they've pulled in the big guns because there's big changes happening. So, what is it that has changed since you've come on board? Obviously, having Wesfarmers behind you, having all that support and resources to help grow the company. So, what is it that's changed about InstantCosmetics, and what is it that you guys are launching?
Yeah, okay. So, you're right, David. I started in April of this year, so still relatively new back in the industry after a little while off. I guess what I did, initially in the first couple of months is I had a look at, our systems, our processes, what was working, what changes could be made to improve the systems that we had. We surveyed some of our current database to understand what our nurses wanted from a partner, I suppose, if you like, from a scripting provider and a wholesale provider. So we kind of, we worked on three key initiatives. One was we did a full rebrand of InstantCosmetics. We wanted a fresh look, a clean look. We wanted something that could speak to our demographic, our database, and that resonated with the survey that came through, some of the answers that came through the survey. So we wanted to speak to our target audience, our customers, our nurses and our doctors. So we did that. We executed a full rebrand and a full refresh of our branding. We then focused very heavily on our software. So we had a really good software, but we needed to make it better, and we needed to make it more purpose fit for the industry in which we work. So we rebuilt the software, I suppose, if you like, with with quite a lot of features, which included a booking system, features that had the direction to administer 6 months in New South Wales and 12 months for all other states, whereas previously we didn't have that functionality. It was script every time a patient comes in. So we needed to be more in line with industry standards. And that's been, our nurses have given us some great feedback around that. We have facial mapping included in our software as well, to help nurses execute better treatment planning, as well as the doctors when they're approving treatment plans. We've enhanced audit functionality. So now we have a platform, if you like, which houses all of our documents, our audits, our booking system, our facial mapping, all of the scripting, for a better user experience, obviously for patient satisfaction, but also for nurse and injector satisfaction. We've included an inventory system in our software and a digitalized drug book.
Right.
Again, it streamlines everything into the one software. It also provides statistics, real-time statistics on purchasing patterns, product patterns, alerts them again when their stock levels are getting to a point where they need to reorder. So really what we've tried to do is we've tried to build, and we have executed and built, an undeniable software for our customers, our healthcare professionals, to be able to help them in their business so that they're not using multiple platforms. They're basically just using one platform. It's saving them money, it's saving them time, and it's overall creating a better user experience. So, that was one of the initiatives that we did. So we did the rebrand, we did the software, and then we did our website. So we rebuilt our website, both front end and back end. When I say front end, that's consumer facing, so anyone can access instantcosmetics.com.au. And then when you sign up with Instant Cosmetics, then you get access to the back end, which basically has new shop. Basically, we've revamped our entire shop experience for our nurses. Any promotional offers that we have with our suppliers, and they could purchase through our new shop. All of our standing operating procedures, our policies and procedures are housed there. As I mentioned before, the clinic audits are also housed there. Any training events that might be coming up are in there. So that's access for nurses and doctors only that have signed up with Instant Cosmetics. So these are the three key things that we did. Which, when we went out to our database to ask them what was important to them, they kind of came back and said, hey, if you can get this right, then, we'd be very happy. And we did that. We executed that in a very short period of time. And obviously, it's something that we continue to work on. It's never going to be one of those things where it's done and dusted and that's it, you forget about it. Absolutely not. We continue to work with our nurses and our doctors for improvements, for feedback. We survey, we ask, we go and visit them and ask them, what else can we do to help you in your business in growing? And so, 2025, alongside the training that we offer, we look to offer more training, things like, complications management webinars, because a lot of the time the training's focused around product-specific training or specific areas. But I think what we need to focus on as well as that is, complications management, business management, how to grow your business, how to attract new customers, how to increase spend from your existing customers, obviously whilst remaining compliant, and keeping an eye on the regulatory space. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to support our customers, both clinically, but also from a business point of view. And aside from these three, obviously business as usual, we work with our suppliers. We work with all the major suppliers in the industry to make sure that we have all the products our nurses and customers and doctors would want through our shop. We have great relationships with the key suppliers. We've got Galderma, Toxin, Allergan. Pricing is a very sensitive issue, especially in this these economic times, if you like. And so our nurses and our doctors have access to really competitive pricing in the market. More so things like with Allergan, our nurses are afforded the privilege of entering the APP, which is the Allergan Partner Privileges Program, where they automatically get platinum discounts on all of their orders, and they can the more they purchase, the better discounts that they get. They've also got a first-time offer only when they sign up and purchase through Allergan, where they get a substantial discount as well on their first order. We partner with training academies, Derma Medical, to provide exceptional training for whether it be a new nurse entering the industry or a advanced nurse that just wants to refresh on certain areas of their clinical journey. And other suppliers like Abboud for PRP and PRF, regenerative medicine. We've just been up to an amazing event at the Carlisle in Brisbane yesterday. And so, that was an exceptional event. So, we're continuously working with suppliers to make sure that we're able to provide our business partners and our healthcare professionals with the best technology, the best products, but also at very competitive pricing, and that's key.
Yeah, it sounds really smart. A lot of the feedback that we get from injectors, even working with other similar companies, is they're having to use a hybrid of 3 or 4 systems to sort of get their paperwork right, and it drives them mental. It's all clunky. It's never quite right. So, is it a fully functioning CRM system then, or do you still need sort of additional software to sort of make it perfect?
I wouldn't say you need additional software, Jake. It's absolutely full functioning in the sense that it does provide the booking functionality, it provides the rostering functionality, the drug book, the face mapping, the scripting. Everything is functional within the one software. I guess next steps would be to just evolve it, make it even a better experience. So whilst everything I spoke about is already functioning, that's what we look to our customers and our partners to say, hey, what else do you want out of this system? And you're absolutely spot on. When I joined, I think one of the things that was very obvious is the number of different platforms nurses and doctors were using to get to the same endpoint, if you like. Multiple passwords, multiple logins. Some were using, paper drug books and then using a different booking system, but then using a different scripting system and using a camera to take photos. It was very interesting that, all these years later, it's kind of that's still happening. So I suppose, I guess that's why we surveyed our database to understand, hey, what would be the ideal scenario for you? What would be a game changer in your business? And having a software that could provide everything that they would need in one login just made sense. And so we started scoping the market to see if there was something that we could look at potentially partnering with. And after a little bit of time, we decided that sort of the best way forward was to build it ourselves. So our amazing development team went to work and basically spent 3 months just building this software. The entire development team worked on it. And it's incredible to be able to launch that to the market with our nurses.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And our customers.
2 things I'm thinking of: integrating AI to make it even easier to take notes, because we work with a partner already that sort of takes digital notes and just makes that a lot easier, but also probably actually more accurate, I would argue. And secondly, our listeners abroad struggle with this as well. It's not just Australian injectors.
Yeah, right.
No one has the right system. Everyone talks about this every day. What CRM do you use? My one's rubbish. My one doesn't do scripts. My one doesn't do photos. So maybe you guys could scale and sort of sell this abroad one day. That would be my plan if I were you.
I mean, potentially. I mean, it was designed a great business opportunity. Thanks, Jake. But look, it was designed initially for us to service our current customers and our customers that are coming over to Instant Cosmetics, obviously. But as you said, some are still using multiple platforms to get to the same endpoint, as you say. But, there is nothing to suggest that, they can't, doctors can use it, dentists can use it, nurses can use it. It's not just designed for, nurse clinics. It's designed for multi-purpose clinics, because you can opt out from using, say, the scripting functionality or the telehealth functionality if you're a doctor, but you can continue to use the inventory system, and you can continue to use other parts of the software to house all the, the documents, the SOPs, the consent forms, all of that. But yeah, absolutely. We are talking to multiple businesses that have shown interest in using the software once they've had a look at it. So
yeah,
it's exciting time.
So do you find that your customers, when they come on board, do they sort of do away with the CRM system that they're currently using? They sort of migrate across to your platform? Is that how it works? Do you guys help your customers with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a support team that's available, where they are available basically all the time. We have a roster for our support team. They onboard them. They help them. They help them basically not only with onboarding. They do initial audits. We handhold them and show them, what is compliant, and what they need to become compliant in the space. And then we obviously help them in transitioning their patients over. Some would like to use still functionality with their current CRM systems, and some just want to use our one for the full end-to-end experience.
Bill, from your perspective as the doctor kind of using this stuff, like how easy is it for doctors listening who might even want to get on board and sort of, maybe be a prescribing doctor? Like, well, what's that experience like?
Pretty seamless. So it's really, really easy in terms of the UX UI for us. We log on every shift sort of as direction to administer or requests come through. We sort of pick them up, have the chat, approve it. So it's very, very simple from our end. I suppose if you want to use the platform in terms of the other side of it not being a scripting doctor, again, very easy to use. We now have our 6 and 12 month scripting, which I think makes things really easy. You do the one treatment plan, you have everything down. It also sort of kickstart your memory as well when the patient comes back, sort of, to refresh yourself what you've discussed and just to know what treatment's available and what you want to do. But of course, as a doctor or dentist, you won't need to use another doctor to do the script. You can just do that. But yeah, still a very good overall system, especially the inventory. So once the treatment's done, you can pop down what you've used and it gets stocked out of your inventory system and the drug book automatically, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a big thing for business owners. A lot of sort of clients that I talk to both here and abroad is obviously talking around business-related issues. And one of the topics that tends to be a big problem for people is that stock control in terms of making sure that every piece of, I guess, product is accounted for, not only from like a medical compliance perspective, but from a business perspective as well, because this stock's really expensive. And, Charlie, you would know as well, like from back in the LCA days, like the way that the clinics manage their stock and sort of the way that they're reporting their accounting figures and being able to look at things in real time to work out, okay, well, I've done this massive order of product that's going to last me X amount of time. How's that going to impact my profitability for this month? And so a lot of people just don't spend enough time managing their stock. Having that makes a big difference for people, especially if it's automatically logging out of their inventory so that when they're looking at their figures, it's actually accurate in terms of how profitable they are.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, David, spot on. I mean, cost of these products is quite substantial. And so, but also from a regulatory perspective, to be compliant in this space, you need to be able to provide accurate details for every unit or every meal or, everything that's been used, or even if it's wastage. So it allows you to put in, if something's gone to wastage, so that you're accountable for everything that gets brought into the clinic and everything that leaves the clinic. There's a trail there to basically show where those products have gone, obviously because they're scheduled medicines. And so that's all part of the software, part of the inventory system, part of the digital drug book.
Yeah.
I remember when I worked with David and at LCA and you, Charlie, I would go around to, I think, 20 clinics once a month and, do like a spot audit and make sure everything's going well and go through the drug book. Now, obviously, because you've digitized that process, how does it work from your perspective now and what's expected, I guess, by the regulator?
I mean, in terms of the regulator, what's expected is that clinics, whether they use the digitized version or they use a paper-based version still, and some nurses still or doctors want to use a paper-based version because that's how they operate, I guess, and they like a paper-based drug book. And what's expected from the regulator is that clinics keep and maintain records of all stock that's brought in, all stock that leaves, and that is required for every single patient that's having a treatment, the date the patient's having the treatment, the product that was used on the patient, the dose that was used on the patient, batch numbers, the healthcare professional that administered the treatment, but also the doctor that approved the treatment or the script. So these are the minimum requirements that's required by the regulators, and these are the things that we have as part of our platform and our software. And whether you decide to use that or you decide to still continue with the paper-based one, these are just the minimum requirements that the TJ and APRA require from our industry as standards.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you've partnered with Derma Medical. Obviously, they're a massive company.
They're international and certainly Australia-wide.
Yeah. So what are they doing for you? What does your training actually look like? And maybe we can talk about newbies, so people that are sort of fresh out of training or nursing school and who haven't done injectables before. And then I guess, ongoing upskilling for practitioners that are potentially a little more advanced or experienced.
So Derma Medical, David, provide a host of modules, whether it's a 2-day, 3-day intensive for nurses that are just joining the industry that want to learn the basics of upper face neurotoxins and lips and mid-face, for instance. Intermediate training courses, for nurses that have been in the industry for a little bit longer and are ready to take that next step potentially into cannula training or T-trough training. And then they've got more advanced 5-day intensive courses, for instance, for nurses that have been in the industry for a while and really want to accelerate their clinical pathway learning. And so Derma Medical, we've teamed up with them. And so our nurses will be able to, book through Derma Medical the courses that they feel is more appropriate to them, depending on where they are in their sort of clinical space and their clinical injecting space, if you like, and then they can go directly through Derma Medical, and Derma Medical will provide the training. As I said, they're basically across all of Australia. They're an international company, so they train all over the world, but in Australia, they're pretty much available everywhere. We get some really good pricing for Instant Cosmetic medical professionals or healthcare professionals who want to do those courses through Derma Medical. And so basically we send them to Derma Medical, and then they work with the team there, and then they can book in their training through them. In terms of new nurses, they do have a 3-day intensive course. It's full 3 days that they work with new nurses on to give them, as I said, the basics for upper face neurotoxins, mid-face dermal fillers, and lips. And then after which point, our team of doctors will continue to work with those new nurses. The training doesn't just stop with our training doesn't just stop with Derma Medical. As I mentioned before, we've got Dr. Jonathan Hopkirk, who's our complications director. He does quarterly webinars on how to manage complications, how to manage patient expectations. So aside from clinical training, we do other types of training, such as complications management. We're moving, as I said, next year into, business training and how to help nurses grow their business. But, overarchingly, we get a lot of support from our suppliers for continuous training. So all the major suppliers, our, Teoxane, Galderma, our Allergans, Lativo and Vogue, all of them provide us with a lot of training to be able to help our nurses, whether, again, they're intermediate, advanced or beginners. And we're seeing a huge push now in bioremodelers and regenerative medicine. Again, that's why we partnered with Abboud for PRP and PRF, and we're seeing huge numbers with PRP and PRF. A huge uptake of nurses wanting to start using those treatments. I think that's kind of really the way of the future in terms of where patient mindset is going. It's regenerative medicine with bioremodelers and stimulators.
Bill, if I can ask you a bit of a controversial question. Maybe there are some people out there who, for whatever reason, rightly or wrongly, they just don't like the telehealth model. They think it's somehow getting around a loophole for whatever reason. So you mentioned complications training and management, but what does happen when someone, worst case scenario, gets a VO or an infection or something? How do you guys manage that remotely? What does the team look like? And how quickly can that sort of process get put into place?
Yeah, so as Charlie mentioned, we're quite lucky to have Dr. Jonathan Hopkirk on our team as the complications director. So he is actually available 24/7 for any of our nurses who script it through with us. And he's pretty quick. He's pretty swift. So once the nurse alerts of a possible VO or any other complications like anaphylaxis, syncope, so myself and Jono will get the text message alert straight away. He then contacts them back, in the next couple of minutes. Initially, generally, we reach them through phone just because that's quickest, and then gather the information we need. Then if we obviously need any more photos or if it needs to be a video call, it's still available through our platform as well. So if it still needs to be a video chat, the availability is there. But end of the day, speed is quite important in these things. Sometimes it needs to be dealt with immediately. So he can still guide them through the phone as to, higher lays now, do this, do that, and try to make sure that the patient is calm and comfortable. So reassuring the patient is another thing that's quite important in these situations. We don't want the nurse to sort of, for a lack of better term, freak out and then causing that domino effect to then the patient starts to freak out. So just having someone jump onto the case as quickly as possible is the goal. And that's why we've brought on Dr. Hopkirk, and it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Or him on call 24/7 for 365 days a year.
Yeah.
Shout out to Jono.
Yeah. And for anyone that doesn't know, Jonathan was the medical director at Laser Clinics Australia. So he's well known here in Australia, maybe perhaps not so much to our overseas listeners, just for some context.
Yeah, he's spoken at CMAC, so the UK guys will probably know him as well.
Yeah.
So what, just to sort of, I guess, extend that question, what happens if this nurse is, I don't know, remote somewhere and they don't know how to manage that VO? What happens then?
So that's what Jono would do. Walk them through the actual process of what to do. We also have our clinical handbook, which would also guide them through the steps from top to bottom as to what you need to do and how to assess the patient, and then, communicate that to Jono. Hopefully he can then guide them through the rest. But he will also generally, if it is a true VO or sounds like a true VO, follow them up the next couple of days as well, just to make sure that the patient is still good. The only issue, I suppose, is that we want to make sure that the patient is able to get to the injecting nurse, because sometimes we obviously have cases where the patient's at home and they live maybe a couple hours away from the injecting nurse. That is where the issue could come in or could arise. Trying to get or transport that patient over to the injector that did the treatment initially.
Yeah, fair enough. What are your thoughts on ultrasound just to sort of manage these things? Do you think it's something that would be relevant to maybe sort of get some training or basic training, or encourage people to look at it even if you can't provide it yourself?
Ultrasound definitely has its place, I reckon. Probably not immediately in a case of an emergency, because obviously you just want to flush, you just want to, whatever it is, dissolve that filler. But there definitely has been cases where there's little residual left in the face that can cause complications down the line. 4 or 5 years down the line, we still have patients who say, they form lumps or little nodules where they were injected with the filler. I think having ultrasound or some form of imaging when it gets to that point, so then you can spot dissolve or try to target the residual a bit better, definitely has its place there. But I suppose it is quite a big cost to sort of have an ultrasound in your injecting clinic, and whether that's going to be worth the investment, I suppose, is something you'll probably have to discuss with the business and see if it's worthwhile.
I mean, I am pro ultrasound because I use it, and you're right. It's minimum probably $8,000-$10,000 just to get the device, and then you've got to do a course and so on. But I can't sort of say how many times it's helped me just solve a problem that the patient suffered with, just like you said, for years, a lump or swelling or VOs as well. So I do think there's a role for emergencies as well. But the problem is scaling that training. It's very, very difficult. And, some people find it challenging. It's a completely different way of looking at a face and anatomy. But maybe sort of growing a network of people you could refer to, that could be an option.
Yeah.
I reckon that more than anything, knowing who you can refer to if there is that kind of case. And we do, luckily we do have doctors in most states, some with and without ultrasound, but at least if our nurses really, really need that second opinion or they really need to refer someone on, we do have our little network of doctors where we can try to assist that patient.
Yeah, Dr. Hopkirk has a pool of doctors around the country that he can use to, if we need to refer a patient to with a complication that needs to be seen and have an ultrasound, we can certainly do that within Australia and refer them to a doctor through Dr. Hopkirk that can see them face to face and then help manage that complication or that adverse event.
Yeah. So what is it that you think is unique in terms of your offering to businesses and practitioners out there that's not available potentially through other providers? Like, what is it about Instant Cosmetics that people should consider if they are looking for a new company to support them with their compliance and scripting services when they've got like a few different options out there, Charlie?
I guess for us, David, we like to see ourselves as a partner with a business.
Yep.
We're still quite a relatively small business, so we know all of our customers. We know them very well. We speak to them. We visit them. We no matter how big we get, I still want us to have that. We've built an undeniable software, which we're continually going to be working on to make sure that, it's gold standard in the industry. We continue to work with our suppliers to provide better, if not best pricing in the market. We have training available. We have a very strong hold on our compliance and clinical governance. I guess, a take-home message for me, to give to our current nurses and potential new ones or doctors is that we want to be there to help you along the journey from beginning, but continuously. We want to partner with you, but we also want to see you grow and we want to see you succeed, and we'll help you get there. I think when I like to see it as more of a family really than anything, than a big corporate business. And I think a lot of nurses especially, or a lot of doctors especially, when they're solo operators or they're working within their own clinic, they value that. They value being able to pick up the phone and calling myself or any of my team to be able to get advice, to be able to get support, and they know they're going to be able to have access to us.
We'll obviously put your details at the bottom of the podcast description so people can connect if, this sort of resonates with them. But how does your onboarding process work? How long does it take to set up an account and get up and running?
Yeah. Look, it's very easy. We have a team of people that are dedicated to our support function, which includes the onboarding. They could just visit, instantcosmetics.com.au, which then they'll go into the sign me up link, fill in a short questionnaire, and then one of our team will contact them and then set up a time to go through the onboarding process. They can then sign them up, and then it's a fairly straightforward, simple process for signing up for scripting, and then for signing up for wholesale as well. Set them up with a password, and then do a tutorial with them on how to use the software, how to order products. So it's a pretty simple, straightforward process.
Awesome. And what about Dr. Built? If we want to get doctors joining your team, how does that process work? Is there any training? Because some doctors might come from a non-aesthetic background, and how does that work?
We actually have a lot of doctors contact through with a lot of aesthetic background, which luckily is great for us. But yeah, I suppose in a very similar way, generally any inquiries come through that sign me up link on the Instant Cosmetics website. But we do get inquiries all the time. And then it's just a matter of seeing if we fit, if we can have them on board. But yeah, I think as Charlie clearly mentioned, we do want to help nurses and walk this journey with them, making sure that end of the day, our mutual goal is patient satisfaction and patient safety.
Fantastic.
Excellent. And Charlie, you mentioned there's sort of more business support coming for your clients next year. Can you share a little bit about what that may look like?
It's by way of webinars. It's also by way of our us going and seeing businesses and supporting our clients and helping them grow their business. But, next year I want to do more of a focus on providing webinars for our nurses that helps them grow their business, like how to attract new customers, how to keep your customers, how to keep them engaged, how to keep them happy. And I think, a lot of nurses and a lot of healthcare professionals are missing that in the industry.
Yeah.
It's one thing, getting clinical training, getting clinical support, getting support from us, from our support office. But it's another thing in helping them, grow their business. Because a lot of nurses and a lot of healthcare professionals are more, they're patient focused, they're patient centric, they're clinical. And business doesn't necessarily always come as second nature to them. Yeah. And so, our job is to help them and guide them through that journey to be able to grow their business and look at all facets of the business, not just their clinical component and the injecting and getting great outcomes, but obviously to help them grow their business.
Yeah. It's an area where almost all healthcare professionals just tend to not put much of their focus. A lot of them, well, it's human nature, isn't it?
It's human nature. They're patient-centric, right?
Yeah, exactly. You'll gravitate to where you feel most comfortable and where your skills are. And I think a lot of people almost feel silly because they're trained professionals, whether they be doctors or nurses, to kind of admit to themselves or to other people, hey, I don't really know about business. It can be confronting, I think. So a lot of people just tend to, and because the industry's been so profitable for a long time, you could sort of take that attitude and still do really, really well. But as you said, it's becoming more competitive. So it's definitely a skill set that people need to sort of lean into. And if you guys are able to help them with that and identify those areas of weaknesses and fill in those knowledge gaps, definitely very, very useful.
I'm very excited about Instant Cosmetics and what it has to offer to the industry.
So thank you for your time, guys. So to end this podcast, do you guys have a special offer or a promo that we can get people excited about?
Look, we do. I think, this year, certainly we've seen, the cost of living is skyrocketed, and there's been a lot of challenges out there, for a lot of people. And it can be sometimes challenging and quite expensive for healthcare professionals that want to change, their scripting. So what we're doing is for anyone who signs up with Instant Cosmetics before the end of December 2024, we've decided to offer them complimentary scripting for the first month once they sign up for scripting and place their first order. So if you've got patients you want to switch over basically or renew scripts for, you've got a full month of complimentary scripting once you sign up with us for scripting and place your first order.
That's fantastic.
Wow, that's very compelling.
Wow. Yeah. So the more you do, the more you save.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, great offer. And obviously the details are all at the bottom of the podcast description. Charlie, nice to connect again. We've not seen each other in years, but I'm sure we'll see each other at the next conference. And Dr. Bill, lovely to meet you. Hopefully we'll see you as well.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Appreciate the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
Good luck.
Very much for the opportunity.
Take care.
Thank you.
For our latest news, follow us on Instagram at Inside Aesthetics Podcast. If you want to get in touch with myself or David, follow us on Instagram as well at Dr. Jake Sloan and David_Inside Aesthetics.
Join our Patreon for invaluable business and injectable education. Get access to our global community of like-minded professionals, live and interactive Zoom sessions, hints and tip videos, webinars, and more. Head over to www.insideaesthetics.com/Patreon for more information.